ElectraCast.
It was only until one day Smokey said, we're just not going to work anymore. We're not going to work with this rope, because who was monitoring the rope was police officers, and they had billy clubs. And if you were to reach over to get to the other side, whichever one it was, they would hit you. But see, all the kids wanted to do was just dance. They loved the music. They wanted to be together.
Welcome to Unapologetically Fab,
where we take you on a journey of discovery as we collectively explore how to stay fab.
and live this life by our own design without apologies. I'm Stefany Baclaan.
And I'm Eden Alpert.
Whoop, whoop. Hello, partner. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
We back at it. We back at it. What's going on?
Oh, a lot of stuff. We got things going on every day, right? But we still move on unapologetically. But I have a question for you. I want to know, because it's been brought up lately. Someone so fabulous we just lost not too long ago, Tina Turner. And that was one woman, well, one of many, many that we know in the music industry or been around or admired that was absolutely unapologetically fab. And I want to know how you feel about it, because I feel a huge loss.
I remember when that happened, my mom actually texted me. I heard people talking about it, but my mom texted me right away. Mm. She loved her. And I actually just watched something on Tina recently on one of the platforms.
Like a documentary?
Yeah.
And there's a play coming out soon, right?
Yeah, okay,
From what I heard. But
it's interesting
she was
that
an inspiration, I will say.
It's interesting that we're talking about her, because we have an interesting guest today anyways, huh?
We do.
Today we're going to talk about trust and the discovery of our own intentions in trusting both ourselves and others. Trusting we are honest and sincere to ourselves, trusting in others, and how we navigate through it. So we're going to dive in a little bit about our internal trusting organism. With that, in this deeply personal episode, we meet Claudette Robinson, who shares her experiences with being the first ever in history, a woman in an all-male band, a person of color, and being named the First Lady of Motown by Motown's founder Berry Gordy, not to mention marrying inside the business and raising a family. We'd love to introduce you to Claudette Robinson, and for me, AKA Mama C.
Yay.
Hi, Mama C.
Well, hello there, and thank you so much for having me. It's my honor and pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much. I'm so finally, this has been my Mama C for 15 years or so? Somewhere in the 15 years, I've been going to her house and congregating in the kitchen, drinking, doing shots with Mama C. So I am super honored that I finally am interviewing you, and you're finally showing me how unapologetically fab we can talk about this out loud. So
I love this. I don't have the relationship you have, but I go back. I went to high school, elementary school and high school, and lived around the corner. We lived on Sierra and Maple Drive. So I used to go to the house with Steffi Blumberg, Greg Bell, everyone who lived on Oakhurst. And Ryan Cassidy, I think, came over sometimes. The Cassidys lived on the corner. So we have history. Also, myself growing up and being in and around the music industry. And it's an honor to have you here and to be next to you. It's been way too long.
An honor. So before we dive into this episode's topic, I have to ask, how do you feel about yourself being unapologetically fab?
Well, I didn't think of myself as being unapologetically fab.
That's why we have you on the show.
I certainly will take that. I'll take it anytime.
How do you feel about it, though?
Well, I think it's a good classification, if you want to call it that.
Let me ask you this. You are the woman, the woman of Motown. You were in an all-male band. You have this niche that you created for yourself, and there's nothing to be apologetic for. You're fabulous. You're beautiful. That's got to feel good.
You.
You've raised a beautiful family.
Thank you.
And you're still humble.
Well, I don't think there's any other way to be except humble because of all the wonderful, amazing things that have happened for me in the last however many years. Well, I think it's over 60 actually years that we began. And even though I never talk about age, because I am forever 21.
Mm-hmm. I got it from my mama.
That's the way to live.
Well, one of the reasons is that people really start treating you like an age, which is a number, and mine is unlisted. People say, well, I know how old you are. I said, no, you don't really know how old I am. You know only what you've read.
Mm-hmm.
People like sometimes add years, take away years. And I am happy. I'm happy to be alive. And I'm planning to reach that age of 150. My doctor and I have agreed that we are going to make me the exception to the rule. And that is 150 is my goal.
I want to be on that one. I'm right there with you. I think age is just a number, and it is what you make of it. My
Absolutely.
dad's 88, touring on the road in London. So when you do what you're passionate about, which is clearly what you're doing with everything you have going on, and I mean, you have a lot going on.
Well, I think it's the only way to keep going and to keep alive. And life is truly worth living. And I am wanting to keep living and enjoy each and every day.
I want to back this up a little bit and take it back to our listeners who actually Mama C is or Claudette Robinson is, because there's so many questions that we used to sit in your room and talk about. And let's start first off with being the first female in an all-male group and person of color, and then what that entailed on going on tour. Give us a little bit of story.
Well, the story, and it's really not a story, it's my life. I actually started with the group from the beginning. The group originally was called the Matadors, and my brother, Emerson Rogers, as we call Sonny, was a part of that group. I had a sister group called the Matadorettes. And when my brother was in the Orchids, I had a group called the Orcherettes. And so for me, it was like kind of following him. I did not have aspirations of becoming an artist or singer. I loved to sing, but on the other hand, I didn't think I had what it would take to get out on stage, because I was a rather reserved, some people would maybe say shy girl. My brother actually thought nothing is going on with this group, so I'm going to join the Army. And that's what he did. He left, and unfortunately, there was a really big time for not only just groups, but they were auditioning all kinds of people all over the city. And we used to sing, when I say we, the Matadorettes, we would be, the guys rehearsed in our basement, and so sometimes I joined them in the basement to sing with them. Well, when this audition came about, we decided that, it wasn't me making the decision, actually. It was actually Smokey who said, will you join us? Will you go with us to the audition? And I was like, well, maybe, but, I don't know. Is my voice going to blend well with these guys, But one of the things I actually had forgotten is that Smokey was still singing in the high school choir with the females. And, he was singing the soprano section. So it wasn't that difficult because he had a naturally high tenor voice. So we practiced a little bit, and we went to the audition. Well, when we got to the audition actually was held at the Jackie Wilson studio. And with the studio, it was like lots and lots of people that were auditioning at that time. We had 5 original songs, and we thought this is going to probably be a shoo-in because who else has all original songs? Well, It wasn't a shoe-in, unfortunately. What it was is that the person auditioning us did not like the fact that I, the girl, was in the background. He wanted me to be the lead singer. Well, they already had a lead singer, and they also had a group. That was their group, not mine. I was filling in for my brother, actually. And so the guy was like, well, can't she sing maybe just with Smokey or something? They can be like...
Were you and Smokey together at this point or no?
Were we together?
Yeah, like were you guys just friends, band members at this point, or?
Well, we were, I guess, liking each other.
Okay, keep
we were
going.
liking each other.
Okay.
You know, the year was 1957. And we were still teenagers, so it wasn't too much, as you say, together. You know, it was, I guess, as much together as teenagers can be.
Flirting?
Flirting. Like, oh, crushes.
Well, I think he really liked me, but he was my brother's friend. So when you're your brother's friend, you don't really pay a lot of attention because, you know, then your brother will know all your business. And so I just was like, I don't know about that. But he was a nice guy. He was a very nice guy. But at that audition, unfortunately, the guy really basically rejected us. He said the world did not need another group that had a female in the background because females usually were the lead singers. You know, because he was wondering, well, how is she going to do the routine? She's going to have on these long dresses. I said, no, I'm not going to be wearing a gown. I will be wearing a little suit, a skirt, a little jacket. That's what we initially did. And our outfits, actually, they would buy 5 suits and they would cut one down for me and then make, you know, a small jacket, whether it was a bolero or double-breasted, and then a skirt. I didn't wear pants. I always wore a skirt. And eventually moved up to wearing a dress, but it would be the same fabric as the guys.
And then when did Smokey Robinson and The Miracles was created? When was
Well, in February 19th, 1958.
his birthday?
It is his birthday,
Wow.
and also Bobby Rogers, who was my cousin, that was his birthday as well. And that was the release of our very first record. But I have to tell you, it was not on Motown because Motown had not started. We did meet Mr. Gordy at that audition. He was noticing, and he said, I really like that group. Like, where'd you get those songs? You know, whatever. And he said, I'd like to work with you. And the guy said, yes. I really wasn't saying anything because it wasn't my group. You know, when the group started working, participating, rehearsing, et cetera, it was a time that we were trying to make a decision as to what we were going to do, how we were going to do it, et cetera. And we started working with Mr. Gordy and Mr. Gordy working with us, and he became our manager. Motown actually did not begin until February 12th, 1959. So we had been working with him for quite a while. When that first record release came, he thought, well, the only way you're really going to get out there and for people to know who you are is to make a record. And so that first record release, as I said, February 19th, 1958, that was on the END record label. And at that time, people all over knew of that record label because of the fact Frankie Lyman and the Teenagers were on that label. So we thought, oh, this is going to be great. We're going to have a hit, and we're just going to be moving along. Well, that was not true because we were moving along. But when we received our first royalty check of that great amount of $3.19.
Split between all of you, right?
That was
all
for everybody.
Exactly.
It was for writing, producing, singing, recording, everything that you could think of. It was for that. And at that time, Smokey said to Mr. Gordy, well, we couldn't do any worse, so you were planning on making your own record company, so why don't you just start it? And that's what happened. Motown began, but actually the very first label was Tamla, Tamla, which is my daughter's name. And,
My best friend.
and my son's name is Berry, and they are both the godchildren of Mr. Gordy.
Is that just incredible? I mean, but when you think about back then and what you're doing today, and I'm listening to the dynamic of how you're saying it wasn't my band, it wasn't my group. I mean, the respect was lovely. I think now it would be such a different dynamic. You deserve and should be front and center, you know, and you're so, I just love watching you and your smile, and you're just so lovely to listen. I could listen to this story all day and just let you go and not ask one question. But what would you say? I mean, there's such a huge difference from the industry from then and now, and how you're guiding through life and guiding your children and your grandchildren. What would you say, what would be the best piece of advice you could give them to navigate through the times now?
Well, I think the first thing in terms of navigating through the industry is that you have to have a love for people. That's first. And of course, you know, my feeling and thoughts always is a love from God, to God, and to pray, because I truly believe in prayer, because it's helped me tremendously throughout my life. Mm-hmm. And I think if you're a group, you really need to work together. Mm-hmm. You know, you don't need to think about the me, it's the us. And you come together and you really, really work hard so that you can be, when I'm saying you, that's the entire group, right, can be a part of whatever it is that you're trying to be. You have to have a love for one another. You have to have a love of people. You have to also recognize that there may be some failures. You may not always get a yes answer. Sometimes and many times it's going to be a no. No, you can't do that. You can't do this. And as you go through life, you recognize that you're not the only one, that there are other people around. And as I think our group would always say to each other, we have a love for each other. We have a togetherness that we want to be. We also are loyal to each other, so that your career can flourish. Because, you know, at our time, there was so much that was going on in terms of racism and segregation. And even though it does exist today, the difference, I think, is that at that time, you knew basically where you could go and where you couldn't go. See, now sometimes that part is hidden. So you don't know, someone can be smiling so nicely in your face, but then behind the scenes, they could care less, in fact. But you don't know that always. You don't realize that they actually really have more of a hatred rather than a love.
Life is hard, but finding a really great podcast makes the days go by so much easier. Hi, my name is Blue Telusma. I'm a writer, an emotional intelligence coach, and the host of Humanize with Blue Telusma, a podcast where we believe that when you humanize everyone in the room, a great conversation is almost guaranteed. Join us every week here on ElectraCast as me and my guest co-hosts unpack big topics and interview even bigger personalities with a sense of humor and a dash of mischief. If you're looking for a new best friend in your head, we've got you covered. ElectraCast.
So that brings us full circle to this episode, which is trusting, which is an interesting topic for you today, because personally knowing what a beautiful soul you are, there's certain things that have been brought out. I don't know if we're allowed to talk about that or if you want to, because you know I keep asking you. Things that have been brought to light about the ex-husband and the father and children and former bandmate during your marriage. Things you didn't know at that time. Can we talk about how trust sits with you today, right now?
Well, you know, trust is something that is not just for me, but for everyone. You want to be able to trust, especially your partner, your husband, whatever your mate may be. You always want that to be first and foremost. But sometimes it does not happen that way. As you're saying something about, I guess you're saying revelations or something. Well, those revelations are probably almost 50 years ago. So it doesn't affect you in the same way had you recognized or realized that that was going on. Because from the outside and on the inner side of what was going on in my life, it was pretty, I won't say perfect because nothing ever is, but I had a pretty good life, you know. We enjoyed each other. We loved each other dearly. In fact, I'm sure he loves me dearly now because what's not to love?
Exactly.
Yes.
Because you're unapologetically fab, Mom.
But that leads me to one question, because we all have a flaw. And what's the one flaw that you think you've worked on the most that's gotten you to where you are right now?
Well, in terms of a flaw, you're speaking of personal?
I'm talking about something. I know I have my little flaws that I work on until I'm no longer on this planet.
Yeah.
And the more I work on it, it helps me be a better person for other people. And it's always something, it's my own little thing that I know I have to work on. But I don't think you have many flaws. But we all have something, right? I mean, you look pretty unapologetically perfect to me.
No one is ever perfect.
Right.
But
you know.
This show here, we are trying to share on this journey because we're all learning. We all know nothing, really. And we're only gaining experience from everybody else. So we want to share, you know, owning everything you've been through, why we're unapologetically fab, why we're unapologetic, why we're, you know, confident in who we are, we're natural, we did this, whatever got you to here.
It doesn't have to be bad. It's just something that like triggers, you know.
No, I think one of the things for me is that I sometimes spend a lot of time trying to make sure that everyone else is comfortable, everyone else is happy, and sometimes not taking anything away from myself. But it's like, I just want everyone to achieve the greatest that they can. That's the reason I wanted to be a teacher, because I thought I could influence them in just getting to reach their goals and their dreams. And I wasn't doing, honestly, a lot of dreaming. You know, I was like one of the people that thought of a lot of things. One of the things that I didn't think about, and it's odd that I am in the industry of show business, because I wanted to be a teacher. And in teaching, I thought I can help these young people. And that's my main reason for still loving young people. The reason I wrote my book, you know, of
What's the book?
It's a book called Claudette's Miraculous Motown Adventure. And it's telling the story in a fantasy way of how I became the First Lady of Motown.
Wow, I love that.
And it's a children's book with wonderful illustrations. Yes.
Yeah, so you'll have to get it and read it, because I tell you, it will tell you a few interesting things about me and about the other members of the group, which were Bobby, Ronnie, Smokey, and Pete. And also Marv Tarplin, our guitarist. He wasn't a miracle, but he was such an amazing part of our career, our history, and so on and so forth. He wrote a lot of the songs along with Smokey and Bobby, and because they all wrote, I mean, they were all writers. You know, even I wrote.
See, something we didn't know. Something I didn't know.
Yeah, I did become, you know, I do have my card in terms of my membership as a writer. And unfortunately, I didn't write enough songs. I should have written many more. But what I would do is I felt like the guys were so amazing as writers. I didn't think I could quite reach that status. So I would write, and I often would take the paper and just tear it up, because I said, nah, it's not good. It's not good. Yeah, I did that. I mean, today I would say, like, why'd you do that? But I am working on my biography.
Yes.
And it's almost complete.
And documentary.
And I am doing my documentary.
Yes.
And that should be released. It's called The First Lady of Motown, the Claudette Robinson story.
Oh, that's great.
And we should be seeing that. Well, we're not even.
You should be seeing it hopefully by the end of the year. I hope so.
What else do you have that you were
Well,
working on
what
right now?
else is that Tamla, my daughter, Lyric, my granddaughter, and I are working on a fashion book. And it'll give you some interesting insight of the fashions from way back when until today. And I think it should be something that people may be interested in. Lyric, of course, is starting her own career as a solo artist, and she is not just from a grandmother standpoint, but she's awesome. She's amazing.
Lyric is like my little niecey.
Maybe we'll have her a Motown night at Vibrato.
She's in the house today. Hey. There's a song that just came out. She did Everything with her brother. It's my favorite song. I made my own video already to it. I already played it for the whole crew today. I play it on repeat while I garden, so my neighbors hear it for 8 hours. It's not a big deal.
I'm sure they love that.
And then I'll give a little plug to Tamla. Is the fashion book maybe under Born Star?
Under Born Star.
So I'll give Tamla a little plug for that too.
Right.
I mean, there's so much I want to cover, and we don't have that much time. One of the things that was important for me to talk about, I think, which makes you fabulous, is because we're going to go backwards again. When you were touring and you would go on tour, you weren't allowed to use the dressing rooms. Didn't we have this conversation? And you had to change in the car, being in that day and age and being who she is right now. And I just think that is fabulous just in itself, because we'll never know what that was like. And you had to go up and perform, right? And smile. But at the same time, how do you say, you didn't know that you were segregated, or that you did, or it was just...
Well, I'd have to say that both. Sometimes you realize, because there were signs, especially when we were working in the South. At that time, we were called colored, not black. Black was not a word that was used in the community of color at that time, because when you called somebody black, you better get ready to fight. Because it was only until James Brown came out with I'm Black and I'm Proud that people embrace the term black. Because even on my birth certificate, it says colored. And for some others, it says Negro. I don't know when it started that they started using black on the birth certificates. There were a lot of different things. I know we don't have the time to tell you all the things that happened, but in terms of when you were mainly in the South, even though segregation existed all the time, in any state, in every state, but it was more recognizable in the South, because they let you know restrooms were segregated, water fountains, it had white and colored on the water fountains. And, even to the point of people who became superstars later on. It's like one of the major stars, when she was working in Las Vegas, she jumped in the swimming pool. And as soon as she got out, they drained the pool. There were also times that people that were working that, if they would eat on the china, then they just broke it and threw it away. So it was like, people say, oh, no, that couldn't have happened. Well, it happened.
I mean, you were through it. So how did that make you feel? And then seeing us today, everything is, we are so proud. We were such a diverse world now, Well, here in Los Angeles, mostly.
Yeah, really. I think we're the only...
I'm going to say that what happens is that it depends on where you are, the venue, the city, the state, the whatever, and what the people, because we worked in audiences where there was a rope that they would put down the middle of the place that you were performing. And what it is to keep whites on one side and people of color, blacks, on the other. And it was only until one day Smokey said, we're just not going to work anymore. We're not going to work with this rope, because who was monitoring the rope was police officers, and they had billy clubs. And if you were to reach over to get to the other side, whichever one it was, they would hit you on the head, on your hands. But see, all the kids wanted to do was just dance. They loved the music. They wanted to be together. They weren't thinking about, well, you're a different color. Because, you all bleed the same color, red. So it doesn't matter if you have an emergency and you need a blood transfusion. You're not going to ask the person, well, what color was that? What color was the person who donated that? So it's like, it is what it is, I guess, and things have changed somewhat. I'm hoping that by the time my grandchildren are my age, that they will have a much better world to live in. Because I tell you, it is important that people learn to live together. And what it is that there are just so many false ideas about who you are and what you are. And like they'll say, oh, well, the person is, they don't smell right, or their hair is bad, or whatever, just all sorts of things. And the bottom line is, we're all only people. Yeah. Excuse me, made me choke on that.
Honestly, you're just so full of gratitude already. Everything you are doing and have done, and the light that you bring to everything you do and say. I'm so full of gratitude for your story. But what does it mean to you? What does gratitude mean to you right now in this day, today?
Today, for me, it means gratitude is such a blessing, because we have to be grateful and thankful for all the things that occur, even some of the bad things, because we can learn something from some of the things that have happened, within our lives. It gives us a better opportunity to be able to perhaps live a little better tomorrow. And I'm going to say, for me, I have so many things to be grateful for. I actually had 8 miscarriages, and they were long-term miscarriages. We lost twins at 7 months. And, they had to be buried and, all the things. I mean, it's just like, but I do have 2, I think, amazing children, Barry and Tamla, and I have 3 adorable grandchildren, Lyric, Thomas, and Alexis. So I'm grateful and thankful for even just, I shouldn't say even just that, but I'm going to say for that, because there's so many women out there that are struggling, to have a child and all the things that they go through. And people don't recognize, even if it's a short-term pregnancy, that is also just as hurting, because, they have hopes, they have dreams, and they're ready to just get out there and just embrace, this body and person that's going to come. And many times they are disappointed. Yeah. And, people don't really know what to say to you, how they're going to approach you, what they can do, how they can do it. And I was one, when you asked a question earlier, I was one that when my miscarriages happened, I didn't want other people to feel bad for me. So I would try my best to take my inner feelings, however hurt I was. And sometimes I was, not sometimes, all the time, extremely hurt, trying to say, God, where are you? How did you disappoint me this time and next time and next time? And, I always had a strong faith and belief. And it was just hard for me to just say, why? Just the why. But, medical technology was so very different. They didn't even know I had twins because ultrasounds had not even occurred yet. So it was just as much a surprise to them as it was to me.
I can't thank you enough for sharing that, because that's one of the questions before we wrap up that I usually ask. Tell us something maybe people don't know about you. And that's a very intimate, vulnerable thing to share with us, and I think important for other women to hear. So I just really want to thank you so much for sharing that very intimate and vulnerable topic. And I want to thank you so much for being here with us today and coming and spending this special quality time with us.
Well, I can't thank you enough for having me. And of course, I know you young ladies. And, it's also good to share some things with the next generation just a wee bit under me.
Well, that's what I want to just, before we wrap this show up, is any advice or how are you an inspiration to others, and how through this story that you might not see yourself, but I hope after this show you see yourself unapologetically fab, because that's what we're trying to portray here for everybody, is to identify that, discover that, own that, be your true authentic self, and to move forward in that direction, because we've got to change the world somehow. So one last question. In what ways have you tried to be an inspiration to others?
I think the best thing that I can say about that is to be as open and honest as you can when you're speaking to others. Not try to make it look like everything is perfect or you never had any pitfalls, downs, ups, or whatever. If you just can get the opportunity, as you're giving me today, to talk and to share, of being unapologetically
You got to take it back. You're going to say that without laughing. You're going to own it.
So I just think that that's what you have to do. I mean, that's what I try to do. I'm not always right on 100%, but I keep trying each day. I know that there's a tomorrow, and as tomorrow comes, I'll just have to say, thank you so much, young ladies, for having me today.
So I'd like you to say one thing.
Yes.
I'm unapologetically fab.
I am unapologetically fab.
I thank you so much. So much mahalo, Mama C. Stay tuned on the next episode of UF with one of the pioneers of the movement in Southern California to provide safe access to medical cannabis in accordance with Proposition 215. The Compassionate Use Act, passed by the people of California in 1996. And also, she's known as the real Nancy Botwin from Weeds, Dina Browner. I'd like to end this show, as I always do, with the quote, "The hardest thing to gain and the easiest thing to lose is trust. Always stay true to self." Thank you for listening today.
Thank you.
And thank you.
You've been listening to Unapologetically Fab, a production of ElectraCast Media. I'm your host and producer, Stefany Baclaan.
And I'm Eden Alpert, co-host and producer.
Our executive producers are Mark Netter
And Peter Rafelson.
and our sound engineer is Chris Sousa. If you like our show, which I hope you do, please rate and review us
Wherever you listen to podcasts.
Hey, it's Tim from 50 Years of Music with 50-Year-Old White Guys, the comedy podcast you had no idea you needed. Join Ben, Jeff, and me as we continue our musical road trip back through the years and around the globe. See, just when you thought all white guys were like Joe Rogan, you come across three educators trying to remember when we were cool.
50 Years of Music with 50-Year-Old White Guys.
ElectraCast.
Are you passionate about saving the planet for future generations? Do you want to learn how to do it? If yes, then you need to tune in to the Nature Back podcast. It's a talk show covering the changing world around us, from renewable energy, sustainable agriculture, circular economy, to ESG and social innovation. Don't miss this opportunity to discover how you can join the movement and make a difference. Subscribe to the Nature Back podcast today on your favorite platform and get ready to be amazed.